I never wanted their money. I never asked for their love. But when I finally broke free, they launched a smear campaign so convincing even I almost believed it. You need to hear how far they went. When I hit the floor at work, everything went dark. 1 second I was standing by the printer, reaching for a folder, and the next, nothing. Just black. Later, I was told my coworkers panicked, called 911 instantly, and that's the only reason I was still alive. When I woke up, I was staring at harsh fluorescent lights, wires taped to my chest, and a steady beep 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 that didn't feel real. But it was. A nurse adjusted a drip by my side, calm, professional, reassuring. That's when the doctor told me the truth. It hadn't been a fainting spell, not dehydration, not stress. I'd had a cardiac event. At my age. The kind of thing you read about, but don't expect to live through. The hospital staff were incredible. They checked on me constantly, treated me like a person who mattered. But when hours passed and no family appeared, they gently told me they'd already contacted my emergency contacts. My parents. I told myself they'd come. I told myself I just had to wait. So I did. 1 day passed. Then 2. Nothing. Not a call, not a text, not even a half-hearted, "How are you?" On the 3rd day, I checked my phone out of sheer habit. For one desperate second, I thought maybe the signal had dropped. But no. There was just one notification. It was a tag on Instagram. Melissa had posted a picture. Her, Paige, and my parents sitting around a picnic table at the lake. My mom had even made her deviled eggs, the ones she only ever made for special occasions. They looked happy, smiling, relaxed. The caption? Family day without the drama. And yes, they tagged me. Like it was funny. Like it was a joke that I was hooked to machines while they were laughing over potato salad. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen until it dimmed in my hands. Something inside me closed that day. Not in an explosive way, but in a quiet, final way. Like a door that locks from the inside and never opens again. I kept recovering, slowly. The doctors kept running tests. I barely spoke unless I had to. Still no word from my family. Not until the 4th day. That's when I woke up to 74 missed calls. 74. And a single text from my father. "We need you. Answer immediately." Not "How are you?" Not "Are you okay?" Just, "We need you." I stared at it for a full minute, maybe more. I wasn't panicked. I wasn't angry. I wasn't anything. Just empty. Like I'd run out of emotions for them altogether. And then I remembered a number. One I hadn't dialed in months, but had never deleted. Saved under a name I never changed, BMPS. My grandfather. I'd avoided calling him because I knew how he felt about my parents and sisters. I didn't want to hear him say "I told you so." But that morning, I called anyway. He picked up on the 2nd ring. Didn't waste a breath. Just asked, "Which hospital?" That was it. No hesitation. No guilt trips. No silence. Just action. Like I mattered. 40 minutes later, he walked in. Same windbreaker he's worn since I was a kid. Same beat-up old watch. Same face that always looked like nothing surprised him anymore. He sat down, gave me one long look, and said, "So, they finally broke you, too, huh?" I didn't even ask how he knew. I just nodded. He stayed with me the entire day. Talked to my nurse. Asked real questions. Paid for one of the tests my insurance had denied, quietly, without making it into some big performance. Then he pulled out his tablet, sat down beside me, and started sorting through the chaos of my life like it was second nature. We went through everything. And what we uncovered hit me harder than the collapse. 5 loan agreements in my name. 3 credit cards. 2 utility bills. A car insurance policy for a vehicle I didn't even drive. It was endless. And the worst part? I hadn't even noticed anymore. Covering for them had become so routine, I didn't realize how deep I'd gotten. Every time they hit a rough patch, I stepped in. Quietly. Automatically. Because I thought that's what family meant. Patch the holes. Carry the weight. Don't expect anything back. But the truth? They expected it. They depended on it. And when I didn't deliver, when I couldn't, they didn't see me as family. They saw me as the problem. The drama. I was finally starting to see it clearly. They hadn't just leaned on me, they had leaned through me. I wasn't a son or a brother in their eyes. I was a pressure valve. A walking bank account. A family failure they could always rely on, but only as long as I kept quiet and never reminded them of what they owed me in return. Gramps sat across from me that night, helping me make a list. Every account. Every bill. Every little vein they'd tapped into me. Then, together, we started cutting the cords. First, I shut off the automatic transfers to Melissa's checking account. She loved to cry broke, swearing she was barely scraping by, but somehow she'd managed 3 separate trips to Miami this year. First class. Cocktails on the beach. She could figure out her own bills now. Next, Paige's rent deposit, gone. My mom's car insurance? She could call the provider herself like every other adult. I removed my card information, reset the passwords, locked it all down. And then there was the loan Melissa had roped me into co-signing. The one she'd conveniently stopped bringing up months ago. I flagged it. Filed a fraud report. Not because I wanted to ruin her, but because I'd never signed up to be her forever backup plan. I wasn't going to keep bleeding out for people who wouldn't even show up when I was lying in a hospital bed. Gramps didn't say much while we worked, but every now and then he'd let out this low sound, half sigh, half chuckle, like he was disappointed but not surprised. He'd told me this before, loyalty is only as strong as the people you give it to. And mine? My loyalty had been wasted. By the time he left that evening, the calls had doubled. My phone was buzzing nonstop until I finally silenced it. My mom left voicemails, pretending she just heard what happened to me. Paige sent texts in all caps, like yelling would make me magically answer. Melissa was quiet, which was somehow worse. Quiet meant she was preparing her next move. Then another text came in from Dad. This is serious. Call me now. Everything is falling apart. Still nothing about the hospital. Nothing about me. Just panic. Not for my health, but because they knew exactly what was coming. And they were right. The first domino had fallen. The difference was, I was the one who pushed it. The fallout started almost immediately. At first, it was voicemails. A dozen, then 2 dozen. I stopped checking after a while, but curiosity got the better of me and I played one on speaker. It was my mom. Her voice was cold, sharp. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't the way to do it. That was her message. Not concern, not fear, just annoyance. Like the family ATM was out of service and she wanted to file a complaint. Melissa came next. She sent a screenshot of her checking account balance, $29. Then she followed up with, what the hell is going on? Fix this. I stared at the text for a moment, felt the heat rising in my chest, then let it drop. It wasn't new. It was just louder now. Paige tried a softer approach. Her message was longer, emotional, dripping with guilt. She wrote that she didn't know what drama was happening, that she loved all of us, and that she just wanted peace. Then she ended with, please don't punish me for things I didn't do. Funny, considering the last time we spoke, she rolled her eyes at me when I said I couldn't co-sign another lease. Called me difficult, then ghosted me for 3 straight months. But it was Dad who crossed the line. Gramps warned me first. He'd spotted Dad's car idling outside my apartment. I was still in recovery, still too weak to walk without help, but that didn't stop him from sitting out there like some kind of hostage negotiator. I didn't answer the door. I didn't respond at all. Later that day, his text came through. You're about to destroy everything we've built. I hope you understand the damage you're causing. Everything we built? The audacity made me laugh out loud. I read it twice, just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. No apology. No mention of the hospital. No concern for what had landed me there. Just fear. Fear of losing the leverage they clung to for far too long. And then came the post. Melissa uploaded a video. No music. No commentary. Just a slow, shaky walkthrough of my parents' house, completely stripped. Not messy. Not, we're moving out. No. Evicted empty. The front door swung open. The living room was bare. Dining table gone. Even the curtains had been taken down. The caption? They took everything. And guess who let them? I watched it once, then pulled up my finance app. Checked the mortgage. It had defaulted again. They hadn't paid a cent into it. Instead, they drained the equity to cover Melissa's credit card debt and to fund Paige's latest business venture, a candle shop, or maybe a clothing boutique. Honestly, I can't even remember. It fizzled out within 2 months. I had warned them last year. Just once. If they didn't get it together, if they didn't manage things better, I was out. They didn't believe me. So when I finally walked away, the bank walked in. Gramps was right there beside me when I uncovered the truth. I didn't even speak at first. I just scrolled through the statements on my phone, showing him balance after balance, the late fees, the foreclosure notices. All of it sent straight to my parents' address so I'd never see the damage until it was too late. He didn't look shocked. Just nodded once, slow and steady, then started dialing numbers like he'd been waiting for this moment. First his lawyer. Then an old friend in estate planning. Finally, an accountant I didn't even know he had. And that's when the full picture came into focus. It wasn't just me they'd been bleeding dry. They'd started circling him, too, my grandfather. The man who had lived his entire life on his own terms. Paige, who could barely sit through a family dinner without rolling her eyes, suddenly took him out to brunch twice. Melissa, who hadn't given him so much as a Christmas card in 10 years, showed up with a wrapped present last December. Even my mom, during one of their phone calls, had the nerve to drop hints about what would be fair once his will came into play. But Gramps wasn't blind. He'd seen it all coming. He'd prepared. Every property, every account, every trust, he'd already moved it, locked it down, not to punish them, but to protect it from them. And then, in the simplest way possible, he handed me the biggest shock of my life. He shifted most of it under a new name. Mine. Not as a gift. Not as a prize. But because, in his words, I was the only one who hadn't asked. I had proven, through the hardest way imaginable, that I could survive without it. That I didn't feel entitled to his legacy. And that, he said, made me the only one worthy of it. That night, Melissa came to the hospital. Security didn't let her in, but I saw her pacing outside through the window. Phone in hand, sunglasses on even though the sun was already fading. She looked nervous, twitchy, like she was rehearsing an argument she never got to make. After 15 minutes, she left. An hour later, my phone buzzed with her message. If you don't fix this, I swear to God, you'll regret it. No emojis. No hashtags. No fake sweetness. Just that sentence. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel anything. I wasn't the son, the brother, the fixer anymore. I was just free. But freedom comes with its own storms. It started with a knock at my hospital door. I thought it was a nurse. Instead, a staff member stepped in, looking hesitant. There's a woman downstairs claiming to be your medical proxy, she said. She insists she needs to speak with your doctor immediately. Says she's your sister. My stomach tightened. I hadn't listed anyone in my immediate family as a contact, just my grandfather. Which sister? I asked. She glanced at her notes. Paige. I almost laughed. Paige, who hadn't texted me in days. Who hadn't visited once. Who hadn't even acknowledged I was in the hospital until I shut off her rent deposit. And now suddenly, she wanted to speak for me? I told them flat out, no one in my family was authorized. The hospital didn't hesitate. Security escorted her out before she ever made it near my room. I thought it was just Paige being dramatic. I was wrong. A few hours later, Gramps walked in carrying a manila envelope. He dropped it onto my bed, sat down, and waited while I opened it. Inside were printed screenshots, emails between my parents and a small law firm I'd never heard of. My blood ran cold as I read. They were investigating legal guardianship over me. According to their pitch, I was unstable, erratic, possibly suffering from trauma. They claimed my recent financial decisions were reckless, proof of emotional volatility. Their plan was simple: if they could get a judge to appoint a temporary conservator, preferably my father, they could freeze everything. Reverse the accounts I'd shut down. Reopen the credit lines. Regain control. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to strip me. I read it 3 times before I finally set it down. These were the same people who hadn't even checked if I was alive 4 days ago. Gramps stayed calm. He told me it wasn't new. Years ago, when my uncle had tried to cut ties with the family, my parents had floated the same idea. It never went anywhere. But now, with real money at stake, they were actually making moves. They weren't calling because they cared. They were calling because they were cornered. And in that moment, something in me clicked. I stopped waiting for apologies. I stopped hoping they'd wake up and see what I'd given. They weren't waking up. They were rewriting the script to make me the villain. So I wrote my own ending. That night, with Gramps beside me, I made another list. Every account. Every shared asset. Every automatic payment I'd ever set up in their favor. By morning, Gramps' lawyer arrived with a stack of paperwork already prepared. We filed everything. A cease and desist against my parents and sisters, barring them from contacting my doctors or impersonating medical proxies. A fraud alert on every financial institution tied to my name. A restraining order on property transfers connected to me. If anyone tried to move or sell an asset I'd co-signed, it would automatically trigger a legal freeze. I even had my HR department reroute my paycheck into a brand new account. One they didn't know existed. One hidden under a holding trust crafted by my grandfather's advisor. And for the first time in my life, I felt secure. Then came the next blow, Paige's video. The camera was shaky, her mascara streaked like she'd been crying for hours. The lighting was bad, but just good enough to make it look authentic. She started with a sniffle, stumbled through a few lines, then locked eyes with the lens. She never said my name, but she didn't need to. "There's someone in our family who's going through something dark," she whispered. "We're trying to help him, but he's lashing out and hurting people. We don't want to lose him, but we also can't keep letting him destroy everything we've built." Everything we've built. That phrase again. Like I had stumbled into their empire and smashed it with a single touch. The video spread fast. Her friends chimed in with comments. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years sent vague little messages. "Stay strong, we're praying for you." Even an old coworker reached out asking if I was okay. Melissa reposted it with a heart emoji and the words, "Praying for peace." Peace? After trying to steal control of my health, my money, my autonomy? They weren't praying for peace. They were praying I'd fold. But I didn't. Instead, I posted something of my own. A single photo, me sitting up in the hospital bed, my grandfather beside me. No dramatic caption, no hashtags. Just one line. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's restraint. I knew it would find its way back to them. And it did. 2 hours later, Melissa's name lit up my phone. I let it ring. She called again. Then Paige. Then Mom. All ignored. Then came the text from Dad. "We didn't want it to come to this. You're forcing us to do things we never wanted to do." They still thought they held the reins. They had no idea what was about to hit them. 2 days later, a letter arrived, hand-delivered to my hospital room. The envelope was crisp, white, professional. For a second, I let myself believe maybe, just maybe, it was human. It wasn't. It was legal. A notice of intent to pursue emergency conservatorship over me. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, because I couldn't believe the words in front of me. They were claiming I was mentally unfit to handle my own affairs. That cutting them off, protecting myself, was proof of erratic behavior. They cited emotional distress and concerns from immediate family about my mental stability following my collapse. They were trying to take everything. Officially. I called my lawyer immediately. He didn't sound shocked. Just steady. He said this wasn't rare, especially in families where someone finally broke the chain of dependence. Their hope was simple: file fast, file dirty, and get a judge to sign off before I could respond. What they didn't know was that Gramps and his team had already moved. My lawyer had notarized statements from every doctor treating me, confirming I was stable, rational, in full control of my choices. We'd gathered proof of income, communication logs, even a letter from my employer confirming I'd voluntarily taken leave but was still fully employed. Their petition never made it past the courthouse doors. The hearing was canceled before it hit the docket. Their lawyer quietly withdrew. Probably realized he'd been fed a sob story and didn't want the career-ending fallout. But my family didn't stop there. They pivoted. The smear campaign began. Old acquaintances started sending me strange messages. A girl I dated years ago messaged me out of nowhere, "I'm so sorry to hear you're struggling. If you need anything, I'm here." A former coworker emailed asking if I needed help getting back on my feet. That's when it hit me, they were rewriting the story. My collapse wasn't a medical crisis anymore. It was a breakdown. My silence wasn't boundaries, it was proof I'd gone off the deep end. And they? They were the heroes trying to save me. It might have worked. If they weren't so sloppy. Melissa couldn't keep her mouth shut. And Paige? She couldn't resist the spotlight. She posted another video, this time polished. Soft piano playing underneath. Filters making her face glow just enough. She spoke with trembling sincerity about how mental illness doesn't always look how you expect, how invisible wounds can destroy families, how she just wanted her brother back. She never said my name. But she didn't have to. Her followers filled in the blanks. You're so strong. Praying for your family. He's lucky to have you. And then, it all flipped. One comment. Someone dug up Melissa's post. Family day without the drama. They paired it side by side with Paige's teary-eyed video. Caption, so where was all this concern when he was actually in the hospital? It exploded. Sympathy turned into outrage. People started digging. Old posts resurfaced. Receipts piled up. Melissa had tagged me in that picnic photo while I was in the ICU. Paige had once tweeted about moochers faking trauma. My mom had posted a smiling birthday dinner picture, just one day after doctors called her about my collapse. The internet doesn't forget. And it didn't forgive. Suddenly, people were asking real questions. Paige's boutique was bombed with bad reviews. Customers demanded refunds. Influencers cut ties overnight. Melissa's sponsorships evaporated. Brands she'd worked with unfollowed her in public silence. Even my dad got caught in the undertow. One of his clients stumbled across the viral threads and brought it up at work. He snapped. HR got involved. Within days, he was put on leave. And by the end of the week, he was gone. Everything they had built, on lies, entitlement, and my silence, was collapsing in real time. That's when my mom finally broke. She sent a single text. Please, can we talk? No excuses. No guilt. Just 5 small words. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was distance. Like those words had come from a stranger I used to know, in a life that no longer belonged to me. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my notes app and started typing out the list of everything I still needed to cut, cancel, and close. Because they still didn't understand the truth. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. I thought the conservatorship fight would be the end of it. After the judge shut it down, after the internet tore them apart, after the sponsors dried up and the jobs disappeared, I thought they'd finally stop. But I should have known better. Selfish people don't surrender. They adapt. The hospital finally discharged me. I was weak, moving slow, but walking on my own again. Gramps pulled up, handed me a cold drink, and told me I'd be staying with him for a while. I didn't argue. My apartment felt too close to them, too contaminated. His place sounded like oxygen. We were halfway there when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. You should really come by the house. We need to talk urgently. Paige. I deleted it without replying. 2 hours later, Jen, my old friend, called. Her voice was sharp, urgent. Check Facebook. Now. I opened the app and there it was. Melissa, Paige, and my mom, standing in front of the old house with a U-Haul truck behind them. My dad stood off to the side, holding a box, his face painted with fake devastation. Their clothes were dirty, hair messy, like they'd staged a tragedy. The caption, written by Melissa, read, "Losing everything hurts. Especially when it's because your own blood turned on you. But we forgive him. He's still our brother. We just want him to come home before it's too late." The comments were split. Strangers offered sympathy. Others tore them apart for being manipulative. I almost closed the app, until I saw the last photo. Paige, holding a framed childhood picture of me. Underneath it, "We're keeping a room ready. Family is forever." It felt like emotional ransom. A digital hostage note dressed up as love. Their way of twisting the story so I looked like the villain, while they wore the mask of victims waiting with open arms. But the real twist came the next day. A letter arrived from the county clerk's office. Inside was a handwritten will. Not from Gramps, from my father. Drafted just a week after their conservatorship attempt failed. It listed his assets, which at this point were pitiful. The condition? Everything would go to the remaining family members who maintained unity. And then, at the bottom, in shaky handwriting, "Colton is disinherited until he returns to this family and reconciles." I stared at the paper for a long time. Then I laughed. Not because I wanted his money, I never did. But because it was the same tired play they'd always run. The trap. The ultimatum. Fall in line or be erased. What they didn't understand was, I wanted to be erased. So I called my lawyer. Together, we drafted a response. A clean, surgical cut. A legal waiver of any claim to their estate. A permanent no-contact notice. A signed document removing them as my emergency contacts, next of kin, or decision-makers in any medical or legal matter. It was short. It was final. They had tried everything, guilt, social media, money, even legacy. And in the end, I chose peace. 2 weeks later, Gramps and I moved out of state. He said he wanted to see the mountains again. We bought a little cabin just outside a quiet town. I took a remote job, cut my hours, picked up books I hadn't read in years. For the first time in forever, I could breathe. Every once in a while, someone from the past reaches out. A cousin. An old neighbor. Curious about what really happened. I never explain. Because I know the truth, people like Melissa, Paige, and my parents are master storytellers. In their versions, they're always the victims. Always the betrayed. Always abandoned by someone cruel and troubled. So I let them have their stories. Because I have something better. I have peace. And peace is worth more than being loved by people who only love you when you're useful.